Good evening and thank you for joining us. It is the 14th day of August 2016. I'm Yvonne Matole and our sign language interpreter is Meresha Owiti. Now today in our discussion on Checkpoint, we have raised this issue here before, that the conversations on electoral reforms in the country have largely left out some of the players. And today we have two of those former presidential candidates who ran in 2013. What do they think about the IEBC deal that was reached last week? How about the campaign financing regulations? We'll be asking them all of these questions and more, having that conversation that we're trying to broaden to include every player and stakeholder in this process. Professor James Olekiapi as well as Mohamed Abduba Dida are with us for our discussion a little later on. Please remember to keep your feedback coming. The hashtag is Checkpoint. Your SMSs are welcome as well. The number is 22155. That's a little bit later on in the show, but let's get to our top stories of the day right here on Checkpoint. And we start off the show this evening on a winning note. Jemima Sumgong has made history by winning Kenya's first ever gold medal in the Women's Olympic Marathon. Sumgong, who is also the reigning London Marathon champion, held a stiff challenge from Kenyan-born Bahrainian Eunice Kirwa in the last 10 kilometers to bag Kenya her first gold of the 2016 Rio Olympic Games. Let's revisit the highlights of this moment of glory. What a proud moment for Kenya, and we thank her very much for making history yet again, and we look forward to more gold medals from Rio. Now, let's come back home now. In the ongoing recruitment of the country's chief and deputy chief justices and judge of the Supreme Court appears to have been thrown into limbo. This is after the Attorney General Githu Muigai moved to court seeking the reinstatement of the controversial law that gives the president powers to pick the Chief Justice from 3 nominees.
As the 6 shortlisted candidates for the Chief Justice job await their public interviews with the Judicial Service Commission in 2 weeks, Attorney General Githu Muigai has ignited yet another storm in the judiciary, in what now appears as a clash of roles of the Attorney General as the chief legal advisor to the government, while at the same time a sitting member of the JSC. Professor Muigai wants the Court of Appeal to reinstate the controversial JSC Amendment Act, which gives the president sweeping powers to pick the country's Chief Justice.
Violated the letter and the spirit of Article 166.
This barely 3 months after the High Court declared the act unconstitutional.
The Attorney General, because he has not recused himself from the Judicial Service Commission, continues to sit as a member, has put himself in an untenable legal position, and will most likely find himself in the most awkward position, even to the extent that he might even be told off by the court.
Githu argues that the 5-judge bench of the High Court made a mistake in law by nullifying the amendment, and that he has raised an arguable case with high chances of success. Critics argue that this latest revival of the controversial law may be a scheme to give the executive more control over who becomes the country's next Chief Justice.
As you're aware, petition number 3 of 2016, filed by the Law Society, struck out the amendment, and we have reverted back to the original amendment, and the JSC will therefore forward one name of the best candidate to His Excellency the President.
We are slowly clamoring for executive presidency, where the president then becomes, all-knowing and with all authority. The fear of independent institutions that is existing in a lot of players in the public sector must completely be perished.
But acting chairperson of the JSC, Professor Margaret Kobia, has defended the AG from condemnation, arguing that he was merely exercising his role as the government's chief legal advisor, and that this does not in any way compromise his position in the JSC. But as the appeal comes for hearing on Monday, the judiciary may be staring at yet another round of uncertainty as further delay in the recruitment of the country's chief and deputy chief justices could renew the crisis at the Supreme Court, less than a year to the 2017 polls. Muremi Mwangi, KTN News, Nairobi.
Now, the race for the Nairobi gubernatorial seat is intensifying with a widening rift within the Jubilee Party. 3 factions have so far emerged in search of the party's ticket, but the intrigues are centered between 2 factions, that of Water Cabinet Secretary Eugene Wamalwa and that of Dagoretti South MP Dennis Waweru, with a war of words currently characterizing the battle for Nairobi.
Nation.
The Tuesday announcement of political parties that support the merger of parties to form the Jubilee Party came with an assurance.
Sisi hatujatuma mtu yeyote kutafuta kiti yeyote. Wananchi wenyewe ndio wataamua. Tuko pamoja.
The party, which will be President Uhuru Kenyatta's vehicle for his 2017 re-election bid, will have the slogan Tuko Pamoja. But if current indications are anything to go by, living up to the slogan during party nominations will not be that easy. And the party may face one of its biggest headaches in Nairobi. The race for the control of the country's capital is shaping up, but the picture is not that perfect, with a widening rift. Water Cabinet Secretary Eugene Wamalwa is eyeing Jubilee's ticket for Nairobi governor. He has the support of former Starehe MP Bishop Margaret Wanjiru and Gatondo South MP Moses Kuria. But Eugene's entry into Nairobi politics was last week dismissed by another Jubilee faction, that of Starehe MP Maina Kamanda, who is backing Dagoretti South MP Dennis Waweru's bid for Nairobi governor.
Wale watu wametoka nje ya Nairobi, wawachane na Nairobi. Wawache wananchi wa Nairobi wachague viongozi wao bila kusaidiwa na watu ambao hawako Nairobi.
Projects have never succeeded. Na hakuna kiti ya kupatianwa Nairobi. Kiti ni ya wananchi na wananchi ndio wataamua ni nani atachaguliwa gavana wa Nairobi.
And now the gloves are off for the Eugene faction.
Niliambiwa wewe ni mtu wa kijiji na jogoo wa mashambani hawiki mjini. Nikaambiwa huu mji uko na wenyewe na si wa mtu wa kijiji kama Eugene Wamalwa.
This is a city where 60% of our GDP is here. Parliament, where I serve, sits here. Government sits here. How can you tell me that Nairobi kuna wenyewe? Ulikuwa umejenga?
Then there is another faction, that of nominated MP and TNA chairman Johnson Sakaja, who has also thrown his hat in the ring. Nairobi Senator Mike Sonko, who will be changing gears and seeking governorship, will not be dealing with the Jubilee intrigues.
If you are thrown out of your party, you can find an independent candidate. I will just go to the people and seek for them to elect me as their next governor of Nairobi.
But the incumbent Evans Kidero is challenging his rivals. The things will not be easy.
Wacha wajaribu. Nairobi sio mchezo. It's not a walk in the park. Tuko hapa, tutawangojea yule ambaye anataka kusimama, acha simame.
But with less than a year to go before the next general election, the battle lines are drawn within Jubilee, and unseating ODM's Evans Kidero may provide Jubilee with one of its biggest unity tests. Rita Tinina, KTN News.
Now it appears that leaders in northern and parts of eastern Kenya are engrossed in what could well be termed as a wave of negotiated democracy. Community elders are issuing decrees for a majority of elected leaders. First, it was leaders in Mandera and Garissa. And as Chris Thairu now reports, the latest county to be enjoined in this agreement is Marsabit.
Elders in Garissa and Marsabit counties are now following in the footsteps of their colleagues in Mandera. This follows the decision by 20 subclans of the predominant Gare community in Mandera County to retire all the sitting elected leaders from the county. The elders are seeking new blood for their leaders in the forthcoming elections. And now politicians, elders and religious leaders from Marsabit, Isiolo and Tana River counties have resolved to form a joint political bloc. They want to allocate the elected positions among different clans from their counties.
Tunabuni muungano ya uchumi, hatukupata habari nyingine imefika wapi. Sisi tunataka kwenda kidogo tofauti, tuweke yote tatu pamoja. Kiuchumi, siasa na kijamii.
Those three counties have a lot in common. They are the same people. They basically speak the same language. These are pastoral communities. People of a very common interest and common agenda.
The leaders say their aim is to enforce the unity of their clans regardless of their political affiliation.
We are also up and we also recognize our diversity and our unity. We also have Ormas among our team, the Tana River group, and basically we don't have different languages in these counties, and we have also brought on board the minority groups among this team.
We owe our people the responsibility of making sure we guide them in the direction where they will be better served.
Garissa County also seems to have followed suit if sentiments echoed by Majority Leader in the National Assembly and Garissa Town MP Aden Duale are anything to go by.
Tumeamua kwa kauli moja ya kwamba ikifikia election ya 2017 ule atabeba pendera ya Jubilee katika hii county kwa kiti ya governor ni Mheshimiwa Ali Buno Korane.
In Mandera County, Area Governor Ali Roba seems to be the only elected leader who has defied the calls by the Gare elders. Roba has vowed to defend his seat come 2017 general election.
He also knows that they plucked him out of nowhere in 2013, really, and gave him that opportunity to be a governor against some very serious candidates who had experience, who had, a name in the society. And in fact, one of them could not take it and he ran against him and he lost.
According to Kero, anyone who defies the decision taken by the leaders is eligible for a penalty, and that might just be the end of their political careers.
It is a delegate system where, each community sends, each of the 20 clans sends nearly 100 people to that conference. So you're talking of thousands of people who are meeting. So it's not something that really 20 people can sit down and say, no, we don't want so and so. They won't get away with it.
Pastoralist communities living in northern Kenya have relied on elders to resolve their inter-clan conflicts and foster peace. Chris Dairo, KTN News.
Right. Now, valuable property is at stake. The bone of contention is ownership of the said property. And locking horns over this property is a family in Nakuru and the management of a community organization. Let's listen to Victor Ogale, who has details of suspected arson over this row.
Paulina Nekesa Kode sips milk from her metallic mug, perhaps the only piece of kitchenware that she managed to salvage. Her home was attacked by unknown people Saturday evening who destroyed crops, cut trees, torched houses, as well as stealing property. Paulina has for over a decade been in the middle of a court battle over the ownership of this 2.1-acre parcel of land, with the location of a local borehole forever remaining a contentious issue. Hell broke loose after the manager's office at the local Ainaptich community borehole adjacent to this home was torched at around 8 p.m. Moments later, villagers started regrouping, and it is believed Mama Paulina's home was torched in a retaliatory move. The attack began at some minutes past 9 p.m. with the attackers continuing with the heinous act for over an hour. It took the efforts of police from the Kaptembo police station to disperse the raging crowd.
Dirisha inafunguka. Mimi kwenda kuangalia namna hii anafanywa. Mimi naanguka huko. Mimi kuanguka mimi nakaa chini.
Walipoingia wakaanza kubomoa manyumba. Na wengine walikuwa na jerrycans za petroli. Wakimwagia petroli juu ya mabati.
So wakati sisi tuliona hiyo hali imekuwa hivyo, tukaona hakuna vile tunaweza zuia. Tukaona njia mzuri ya kufanya ni kutoka.
In 2004, a case filed by the local community at the land tribunal in Nakuru had tried to bar Paulina from taking over ownership of the land where the community borehole lies. She later acquired a green card before embarking on acquiring a title deed. The move left the locals with no option but to have the case moved to the High Court. On 14th of July this year, Judge Emmanuel Sila at the Environment and Land Court failed to rule on who the owner of the land is. However, the officials of Ainaptich Borehole have an allotment letter indicating that the entire land that houses the borehole and its pump belongs to Ainaptich Community Borehole.
Na tayari saa hii tukisungumza tumekutana na tumepata itini na members tumepeleka kesi kufile tena kotini. Kama sasa members ya Ainaptich wana file kesi na wameweka watu watatu wa kupeleka hiyo kesi.
Even as Paulina and her family count losses after the attack that has now left her children and grandchildren homeless, the borehole officials seem not to relent over the ownership tussle of the borehole. The matter is already under investigation by officers from the Kaptembo police station. Victor Ogale, KTN News, Kapkures, Nakuru County.
Let's now move to Eldoret, where a mother has found herself between a rock and a hard place. Zipporah Komen is raising a daughter with cerebral palsy. And because she's unable to raise funds for her treatment, the mother of 3 has resorted to tying up her 13-year-old girl in order to confine her indoors. Here's Elvis Koske with more.
Kapsiekwa village in Elgeyo Marakwet County, the steep hill and the rough terrain that surrounds the Kaboyo home depicts the magnitude of the matter at hand. 13-year-old Diana Komen suffers from cerebral palsy, a condition that has forced her mother Zipporah Komen to bear the burden. Diana was diagnosed with the condition when she was 1 year old. The child is now paralyzed.
Siku moja nikambungia mahali pa nini ng'ombe, kwa sababu ng'ombe sinafungwa poma ya ng'ombe. Kwenda kurutu nikafuriki hapana, wacha nimweke kamba ndio asiende arokote chafu na apate chua pia kwa nje. Kwa sababu akianguka hakuna mtu atamsaidia, labda mimi niko mbali kidogo na aongee.
The mother of 3 lives in abject poverty. Paying for Diana's treatment is beyond her reach. This mad-old heart being their only earthly possession.
Sasa ni wakati wa faridi. Sasa kuna kitu anafuruta yeye, nafuruta hata maji hivi. Sasa akifuruta hivi, utasikia uchungu ukiwa msasa.
The family is advised to seek the support of child rights organization. After all, tying her up could attract dire legal consequences.
Mama anamkosea mtoto kabisa na sheria inafaa ichukue mikono yake. Because mtoto kama ako na shida si kwa kupenda kwa mzazi na si kwa kupenda kwa mtoto. Ile mzazi anafaa kufanya kwanza ni kupeleka mtoto apate matibabu. Ambapo ataelekezwa ni jinsi gani ambavyo anaweza lea huyu mtoto aishi maisha ya kikawaida.
Ndio. Kwa sababu hata amejaribu sana, kama angekuwa mwingine angekuwa ameua huyu mtoto ama afanye vitu zingine ama hata atoroke.
Kiwana matatizo mwenye anapitia saa hii kufunga na anaenda kasi dakika 2-3 hivi hawezi enda mbali. So huyu mtoto anahitaji kweli usaidizi hali ya juu.
Hii nini itakatika? Kikatika sina anaenda. Labda hata saa hii ulikuwa umetoka.
Neighbors are now calling on the government and other well-wishers to assist the family. Elvis Kosgei, KTN News, Kapsiekwa Village, Elgeyo Marakwet County.
You're watching Checkpoint this Sunday evening, and we're just about to have that discussion. With us here, we have former presidential candidates James Ole Kiapi and Mohamed Abduba Dida. What are your questions to them? Any comments you have? I have one here on Twitter from Wamboy. You say some Kenyans want Raila, who's been keeping government in check, to retire. Yet others like Dida and Kiapi only appear during elections. Well, we'll be asking them what they've been up to from 2013 and whether indeed they will be running in 2017. Please do keep your questions and comments coming through. We'll be back with them after this break. In the country, especially after the regulations that were released by IEBC, continues to elicit mixed reactions. Some of them not so good. In fact, as you heard from the discussion we had with our panelists a little earlier on. So let's continue to break down these numbers for you. On the number tonight, I want us to take this situation. You now know the figures by now. Huh? So this is what we're saying, and this is what the IBC rather is saying, that political parties can get contributions of up to 15 billion. The presidential candidates can spend up to 5 billion. It's actually 5.2. And individual contributions can go up to 3 billion shillings for contenders. So I want us to put all of these figures together, including the next ones here on the wall, including how much governors, senators, women rep can spend, all that amount of money. Now, this is what we've done. We've put together all those figures and tabulated them. This is assuming just one political party spends up to the maximum provided, 15 billion, one presidential candidate up to the maximum of 5 billion, one individual contributing up to the maximum allowed of 3 billion, and that these ones seeking these seats use up to the maximum that is allowed. Remember, this is one party, one candidate for each seat. That total amount comes to about 23.4 billion shillings. Now, these amounts are mind-boggling, and Kenyans are perhaps shocked that this is an amount of money that could perhaps be spent. So we've tried to put these figures in perspective for you. Remember, this is one party, one candidate. Each seat comes to 23.4 billion shillings. So the big question then is, what can 23.4 billion shillings do in this country? Remember, this is an amount of money that would be allowed to be spent in the period of 6 months up to the election. So this is 6 months that these individuals would spend if they lived up to the maximum provided by IBC. So what can 23.4 billion shillings do? Well, now we know it can be used to finance the campaigns of all of those seats, including a political party, over 6 months. But let's take a look at some of the allocations for the counties for this financial year 2016-2017. Now, that 23.4 billion shillings, assuming the maximum is spent over 6 months, can actually fund Nairobi County for about 1.5 years. Remember, these allocations are yearly. It can fund Wajir County for 3 years, and the same for Kitui County. And if you take a look at the other allocations for Kilifi County, which gets 8.3 billion shillings this year, this is about 2 years, almost 3 years. So these are the amounts of money that entire counties have to spend in one financial year. Assuming the 23.4 billion shillings in its entirety is spent over the 6 months, that is exactly what that amount of money can do. Are these figures perhaps based on reality? Many people are starting to talk about that. Professor James Ole Kiapi earlier on told us there were no consultations, at least on his part, as to how much money that was spent and whether this is in reality with the state of our economy at the time. And remember, that figure of 23.4 billion shillings was for just one party and one candidate. We have, if you consider the merger now that's coming up, we have over 50 political parties. If each of them were to have all of these candidates running and were allowed to spend up to that amount of money, is this figure realistic? That is the question on Kenyans' minds, even as we await to see what happens with the campaign period that is sadly already beginning. And that is the number tonight. We're taking a break. We'll be back for the Day Sports. Welcome to our discussion on Checkpoint. A lot has happened in the last week or so. The IEBC released the campaign financing regulations, and also a deal was finally reached in the stalemate on the IEBC. There was a joint parliamentary select committee comprising CORD and Jubilee members. Now, We have said time and time again here on Checkpoint that a number of other voices need to be included in this conversation. And tonight, we're glad to have with us presidential candidates in 2013, Mohamed Abdu Badira and Professor James Ole Kiapi, and they're joining us right now. Keep your comments coming in and any questions that you have for our guests right here on Checkpoint. Gentlemen, thank you both very much for making the time. I'll start with you, Mr. Dida. A lot has been happening in the country. People have been unhappy with IEBC. A deal has now been reached. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so many of us have gone non-committal because in Kenya and in Africa, a leader is chosen and they go dump. Mm-hmm. So many things, not only IEBC, mm-hmm. is managed in a very funny and in a very wrong way. Mm-hmm. If you say, and people will listen, then it is good, we say. But if we say and nobody listens, personally, I'm not a good noisemaker. I just decided to go non-committal. Okay. So do you have problems with IEBC and have just chosen not to speak because nobody will listen? Uh-huh. We are Kenyans. Uh-huh. And whatever is affecting us today has not started today. Mm-hmm. The issue of corruption, the issue of manipulation, the issue of an organization being referred to as independent, mm-hmm. when in the real sense it is a beggar. How do you call it independent when every morning IEBC will ask you for money and the government tells IEBC there is no money? So basically, what I wanted to know is what was the cause of Honorable Raila agitation? Why did he just abruptly? Mm-hmm. IEBC was not formed yesterday. It was there. What happened? What triggered?
Do you think his calls for that was sincere or not?
Well, according to, they have both a mistake. Okay. I think it is actually relating to why did you refuse my Okoa Kenya referendum move, uh-huh. those signatures? Uh-huh. How IEBC handled it was not professional, and court was not ready. If you tell me this is wrong and I'm wrong, there's no point of forcing my right.
All right. So you see some ill will on both sides.
On both sides.
Okay. All right. Prof, he's remaining non-committal. He's saying making noise and it won't change. What are your thoughts on IEBC and the fact that there is now a deal that's on the table? We're waiting to hear the finer details when this is tabled in Parliament.
Now, Yvonne, in 2013, we had one of the most complex and very contentious election. And in fact, the presidential election or results were taken to the Supreme Court. And then there were a lot of things that came out, including, for example, the failure of the technology, the submission of results. There were very specific things that needed to be addressed arising from that election. And so naturally, personally, I expected that the leadership part of the government and the main opposition court, because they are the main opposition, had the cardinal responsibility as way back as 2014 to actually begin that process in a very reasonable, in a very peaceful, amicable environment. Unfortunately, in Kenya, as my colleague has said, we really never have reasonable things. We never have amicable things. Everything is seen in terms of, my own political interest and your political interest, what I have to gain and what you have to lose. And therefore, everybody conveniently decided to keep quiet, or they didn't see the need for the reforms that needed to take place much earlier on, so that we are able to be more ready, more prepared to handle 2017 elections. Well, whatever the motivation of court, and then, fast forward, then recently, of course, you had a lot of street protests, which eventually led to the process that's going on now. Now, notwithstanding the political interests and the political motivation that were involved in the street protests, there was actually need for reforms.
Okay.
And there has been a need for reforms. Unfortunately, even in my case, I was streeting, but you see, the media really ignores us. When you are not in a high public office in Kenya, somehow you just vanish.
Okay, so you say you were tweeting, but you said everybody kept quiet about this, but this includes both of you, gentlemen.
I'm telling you the story.
Part of, the 2013 election.
I was tweeting in 2014, that's earlier on, and telling people, why don't we start the IEBC reforms? And then I was attacked on social media that now you're just talking about politics throughout. And I knew exactly.
But that is the nature of politics, isn't it?
But I knew that we were going to go exactly to that point sooner than later. And here we are.
All right, so here we are. Allow me to challenge you a little bit, Professor, but none of you made any presentations to the Select Committee. So are you passively waiting on the sidelines for somebody else to reform the electoral system and then come and participate in it in 2017?
We didn't make any submission to the Select Committee because the Select Committee in the first place is framed in a certain way. The Select Committee is driven by the main, the two main protagonists.
But you could have raised your voices and say, we're here. This doesn't have to be a conversation between two players.
We didn't want to sanitize their process. We want them to do the thing they wanted to do, because if they really wanted our voice, then we should have also been included, even in that process, even in that Select Committee. The Select Committee should have invited political party leaders to come and make submission and actually make a point of creating a forum for political parties, first and foremost, to come and make submission. But they didn't do that. They conveniently said, okay, anybody can make submissions.
But let me pose this to you, Mohammed, but then you all sat and kept quiet. We didn't hear any agitation from you saying we need to be part of the talks.
In Kenya, for you to make any contribution, you have to make arrangements. If there's a meeting somewhere, unless you make arrangements, or you call, reserve my chair, who this, who are you, is a long process. Number two, if what you are thinking to contribute is said by a person, then I don't see the reason for repeating.
Okay, great. So tell us then what you believe has been said that you also share regarding what's been happening in the country over the last year.
Changing IEBC, changing IEBC is nothing. Will not change anything in this country. Number one, the time that we have to the election is limited, and a lot of preparation is required. It was easy and understanding the mistake that these Kenyans have committed. And it is well known that once bitten, twice shy. We could even ask the children of IEBC commissioners to tell them, shame on you, why you are shaming us? You are telling me at home to be trustworthy, you are telling me to be organized, you are telling me to be straight, you are telling me not to be corrupt and influenced, and Dad, you are behaving like this, Mom, you are behaving like this. You know, when I look at the team, they were a bit serious. And it is not easy how the elections were handled. These machines were new. We are actually back in technology. So many things have to be done. Financially, they don't have enough.
So do you think IBC did a good job in 2013?
They did a good job.
Okay.
They tried and they did a good job. And they could do a very good job this time. Because so many Kenyans commented, and they were not deaf. They were listening and they were hearing what was being said. Now, if you bring a new team, that team has that culture of corruption in them. CORD will bring, the opposition will bring its favorites, yeah, and they want to win. Jubilee will bring party's favorites because they want to win. How many days did they sit? These are grown-ups.
So what you're saying is the die is
How many days
cast?
did they sit? And they were just at loggerheads.
Okay.
Nothing has been concluded. After all those days, sitting day and night.
Well, an agreement has been reached.
What agreement? The agreement that was made is let's form a commission. Let's form a commission
So
of 9
no
members.
changes, the changes won't make a difference?
Personally, I don't think.
Okay. All right.
Yvonne, okay. I think there are two fundamental issues. In 2013, we had, to some extent, some failures of the system failure, which needs to be rectified before the next elections. But number two, I think the fundamental point is, what is the guarantee that every time we change laws, every time we come with new regulations, we will fix a problem, which in fact is because of the integrity threshold of our public
So how do
officials.
we ensure then the integrity threshold of our
And
public
that is the issue.
officials? Yes.
That's the issue, because we can repeat this many times. Every election we can do many changes, but the main call here is the call of integrity.
Okay, and that
on the
was
part of public officials.
Right, and that was a big discussion at the Joint Parliamentary Select Committee as to whether we should go the IPPG way of choosing based on parliamentary strength, or whether we should
I
have
support
a
IPPG
panel.
to some extent,
Okay.
and unfortunately, it has become a called Jubilee unfair. Had it been truly IPPG, and in fact, all we were trying to do is that we all take responsibility.
Okay.
It wasn't that it is the best.
But an IPPG would lock out parties like yours and yours.
An IPPG was supposed to look for the interests of everybody who is a player, but which in this particular case, most of us are locked out, or the smaller parties are locked out because it is Jubilee court driven. And as Dida has said, basically it is going to be securing the interests of court and the interests of Jubilee.
Because the IPPG way is talking about
But
parliamentary
in terms of
representation.
the institution of IEBC, I don't think we have institutionalized IEBC, because I think that in the next election, 2022, we'll probably be having another huge coalition on this side and that side, and there will be other new interests. So what we really need to do is to look at the fundamental principles, things that we need to do that have to hold through time.
And what are those fundamental principles?
It is the same. They are defined in our constitution. They are defined national values. Chapter 6 of the constitution defines what is the call for every public official. This integrity thing is what is hurting Kenya, corruption.
Okay. Yes, you wanted to add something?
What is lacking is not getting a new team every other time. What is lacking is not, that group is not represented. What is lacking in Kenya is we have no respect for God. We are immoral. If we cannot respect God, we cannot respect a Kenyan, we cannot respect Kenya, we cannot respect anybody. We have just come down from where God has placed us, human beings, and we are worse than animals. If you cannot respect, you lock yourself in a small room and you work on a bottle of soda is 100 bob. We conducted a seminar, it was like this, because the auditors are coming tomorrow. But in that room that you locked, and that accountant that you tell him, play it like this, work it like this, if you are 2, the 3rd is God.
So how
if
do
you
we
are 3, the 4th is God. Wherever you are, you are created by God for a purpose.
Okay.
If you have no respect for God, you cannot respect your own mother.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about then 2017, because you say IEBC did a good job under the circumstances in 2013, considering it was the first election.
Under the circumstances.
Under the circumstances.
And I think most people were understanding of IEBC, given that the time was short. This was the first time we were bringing to life the new constitution. So really, a lot of us, allowed a lot of things to pass. 2017, on the other hand, we would have expected, and we do expect, a much higher threshold, a much higher standard of performance on the part of officials who will be responsible for our elections.
Okay. So do you trust 2017? Do you trust IEBC in 2017?
I'm worried.
But you just said they did a good job and that no changes will make any difference.
Now that a new team is coming, one, they will lack the experience.
Okay.
Two, who will choose these 9 commissioners? They said the parliamentary committee and the clergy. Do you know that Kenya is rotten because of the failure of the clergy? The most corrupt institution in this country, worse than the police, is the clergy. You know, they are hiding under the blanket God.
So what's your alternative?
My alternative is, let's leave IEBC, the former team, to continue, and maybe we can help them. You know, if you give me a responsibility, and sincerely you see, I've scored some percentage, you can encourage me. You can talk to me. You can advise me.
But some would say that's what's been happening from 2013 to this moment. People have been discussing IEBC's
for how long
performance
was
and talking to them.
IEBC begging for funds?
Okay.
For how long?
How come we didn't hear this from both of you? I think that is the question that baffles. That if you had alternatives, why were these not presented?
We need a change.
Yeah.
We need a change in both the leadership of IEBC, and I actually think that every team that comes must have the responsibility to prepare for one election and hand over, if possible. Or you give them 2. If you don't want to give them, if you want to give them 2, then you must set it out in such a way that they have a time to do that. But it was already untenable for this IEBC to continue because their term is expiring just about the time that if you have, for example, a rerun, or if you have some contestation, then there might be you will not have a commission to handle it. But on the other hand, it was not about whether they did wrong or right. It was the perception. And now, this is all politics in this country.
Okay, what do you think? Because you're talking about public perception about whether they did wrong or right. I'm asking you as a 2013 presidential
that's
contender.
what I'm answering.
Did they do right or wrong?
No, I think that 2013, I even personally had issues with them, which I don't want to raise here, and they know what they are.
Why not?
No, because that season had passed.
Okay.
We had issues even as political parties. We had a lot of challenges, but everybody was working through a new system.
Okay.
But this laxity up to this point, I mean, look at this campaign financing that they're coming up with.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in a moment.
Very rational.
Yeah.
So in my view, although our institution, the clergy and, all the parties have issues, we must make those incremental steps. But ultimately, it is the Kenyan people, all of us, the media, every one of us must be a watchdog of what is happening in this country.
Okay, all right.
You repeated that we went quiet. How did you get me this evening? You just made one call, and I'm available. Had you called us every day, every week, we were available.
You can also call us.
Yvonne, the truth is...
You could also call a press conference. You could also rally your supporters. I mean, you got 50,000 plus votes.
As I told you earlier, there is a tendency to focus on the people who are shouting the most.
Okay.
But sometimes if you want, like you did this time, if you want to hear another view, you have also to hear a different narrative.
Okay, so we should have called. Okay. But was there any effort on your part, perhaps between 2013 and 2017? Allow me to ask this, because there's people who are asking this on social media. What have the two of you been doing from 2013 to now that then says, even though they didn't win the presidency, but they've been mobilizing the youth, contributing to development, to policy, to changes in the electoral system, development, how parliament is run? We haven't heard many comments on a number of issues, the security bill that was passed, issues that have been, plaguing the country. Corruption has been a big one with this administration.
This question was asked last month by one of your reporters, Kaemba, and I told him I prepared 15 lectures. If Kenyans will give the ears and listen to these lectures, Kenya can change. And basically, I was investigating from a religious perspective why the human being is so special and the most valued before God, and what has caused the human being to go so petty? I have them. I took time reading about this. So when you asked me, I told them, I have this, and it can change many mindsets. By the way, every day I give 5 lectures in mosques. I don't know why the media focuses on what happens in the church. Ruto in the church, politicians in the church. We are in the mosques. If you come to the mosque, we are there. But I don't know what criteria you use. Maybe, I don't know whether they make payments. But every day, from dawn to dusk, we are talking and educating Kenyans. We are giving lectures in mosques. We are giving lectures talking to the youth. Yeah? We are engaged in a lot of thinking. And we have so many ideas that can help us and that can help Kenya. You know, we are not in Kenya by default. God has designed, everything belongs to him. There is that small piece of land called Kenya, and there is a reason as to why I was born here.
Okay.
So many things has gone messy, but when somebody wants to show that he is right, and he talks, and he wants to use money, and he wants to use the media, and he wants to use this, then 2 wrongs will actually, you know, when a fool talks, and then you also talk, it cannot work. But if you give the chance, if you are given the chance, why is man corrupt? Somebody is given a salary of 1 million, is given security, he's given entertainment, he's given health care for it, anything, everything is given. And then the person ends up stealing yellow maize. Is this person sick? What is wrong with this person?
Okay, all right.
So these are the things that I was looking at. And I discussed with KBC, I discussed with KTN, I called your editors for a meeting, and I told them, listen, I have these lectures. And they said, oh, we don't have a program that is religious. You know, I told them, sometimes you can show funny things like condoms and, you know, beer and funny things. They are more important things than what you are showing.
Okay.
And,
so making time for your lectures.
I told them, make time for what is rational, for what is... People may not, Kenyans, youth, and everybody may like music, may like funny things. But as much as they don't want to listen to what God wants and they don't want to listen to God, we need to create time and tell them, even if it is weekly.
All right. Okay,
well,
your
Yvonne,
point is made. Yes.
You have asked
very
a very
quickly.
good question.
Yeah.
What is it we have been doing?
Yes.
I have been serving in public for over maybe 25 years now. After the elections, I went back to my university, University of Eldoret, helping young people who are doing PhDs, supervising them, and those who are doing masters. I am also the patron of World Youth Parliament. I have been having meetings with young people and talking, and they know it. Those who are listening to this, they know that if you found me anywhere at any one time, I'll probably be with 10 youth, 5 youth, 1 youth. So we are serving, and we are also talking. We are talking to the extent that, you know, we have a chance to talk. So otherwise, we are serving and we are talking and we are here.
Okay, all right. Serving and talking. All right. So let's talk a little bit about what's coming up in 2017. First of all, to just clarify, are you both running in 2017 for president again? We'll start with you. Yes? No?
2017, I'm running. And I think Kenyans have learned a lesson. In 2013, I told them that enemies will agree. I told them that enemies will regroup just to reap the innocent and the poor. And this is now what is happening, regrouping and shouting and picking and, you know. So if Kenyans, your tribe will not help you. Your tribe will never help you. There's no time your tribe will pay your rent. It is policy. If we improve the lifestyle, what we need is leadership. A serious, God-fearing leadership that will come up with good governance. The good governance will come up with actually trust of the people. Currently, we have gone to an extent that communities don't trust one another.
Okay, so you're running in 2017?
Seriously.
You're running in 2017?
Right now, I'm consulting.
Okay.
And I do believe that the country deserves very good leadership, serious leadership.
Can you provide that good leadership in 2017?
I have always provided serious leadership. But I will answer that question very specifically at the right time.
Okay, at the right time. But let's talk about campaign financing regulations right now that the IEBC gave out. What are your thoughts on that? There's a cap on spending for presidential candidates and all the other positions that are available, including donations to parties.
Yvonne, actually, I think that was a shock to many of us. It was a shock because we suddenly were told that IEBC has gazetted, finance levels, and that for presidential candidate, you can spend up to 5.2 billion, and if you're a governor, 400 maybe and 30-something million, and if you're a senator, and so forth and so forth. And there are a few issues that come up with that. Number one, sometimes I have a feeling that when public officials are well taken care of, paid very high salaries, and maybe have all this cushioned, economically cushioned, they reach a point where they lose the sense of reality of where the country is. Because when you say that to run for president, you can spend up to 5.2 billion, are you really in Kenya or you are in Mars? I mean, because if you are in Kenya, then you will know that we are dealing with a country where there is very high levels of poverty. We are dealing with a country where people sometimes even sleep without food. We are dealing with a country where some children, go to class where there are no even desks, like I saw today in Tana River, a school in Tana River, and so forth and so on. And therefore, that reality does not exist here.
All right. But
so I will start by saying it's outrageous. And even if people are spending that money, I think that it is incumbent upon all of us, including the media, to ask very hard questions about where that money is coming from. We are talking every time about corruption in high places, public corruption, and yet we can allow people to spend 10, 15 billion to run all over the country, and nobody asks where and who is contributing that money. So for me, I think it is very unrealistic. It is based on, I don't know.
Okay, many would say it's a cap. It doesn't mean to run for president, you must spend 5 billion shillings.
But you already
can spend
putting in the minds of people
any amount of money or no amount of money.
Yeah, you're already saying that we are thinking about this amount of money.
Okay.
What
do you think?
It is politics. It's not leadership. And whoever came up with such calculations was looking at the rich. 70% of Kenyans have not seen 100,000 together, and they may die without seeing it. They looked at who is the president, who is in the opposition, how much they have stolen, for how long they have stolen, what they got from their parents, and they just said, these are billionaires. It is encouraging impunity. In fact, a very good and practical system is what the Gari community did in Northeastern. My father and my parents understand me better than any other person. That is why the elders need to sit down. Anybody who aspires for any seat will present himself or herself before the Council of Elders, who are our parents. And then, for whichever reason, anybody who is vetted and is clear to go for the post, what expense do you have there? What expense? The elders will say, if you want to vie for any position, pay a certain amount registration fees and come, present yourself, bring your CV.
Right.
They sit down. Then they say, our governor, we have sent his Yvonne.
All right, but to be fair though, what you're talking about, because even last year, the IEBC drastically reduced the amounts of money for candidates to register. And to be fair, this is a cap. It does not necessarily define that. And if you both say you're running on values, do you not think values trump money, or is it, what are your thoughts?
You know, you can even say 50 billion. You can even say 10 billion.
Yeah.
You can even say 1 billion. The issue we are raising is what is the basis of the 5.2 billion?
Okay.
Because I expected some assessment to be done so that IEBC would have maybe talked to past candidates to find out how much they actually spend, so that when you have all that data, including the economic situation of the country, including the diversity of counties and average economic incomes, then you can arrive at some level, and actually you back it up with some good principles that we considered this, and we think for where we are now, this would be the best. These are the recommended levels. Okay. But you cannot just sit back and then...
So for you it was arbitrary, there was no consultation?
Totally arbitrary.
Okay, we have just about a minute to wrap up our conversation, and I'd like to give each of you 30 seconds to give us your closing comments. I'll start with you.
Well, Kenya is a country that is potentially blessed. If you look at many dimensions, and if you look at Kenya from many perspectives, Kenya is a good country. And I think we need a savior. I don't know whether it is time for Jesus to come back. If he will stay away until 2017, then God himself, I say this. I get my energy and I just get motivated when I see the poor moving from Mathare, walking. It is raining, it is chilly, it is cold. They are seeking for the right thing. What these people need are good leaders, are sincere leaders. If tribe will determine leadership in this country, if money will determine leadership in this country, I ask God to intervene.
Thank you.
Yvonne, countless times I've met many Kenyans, and they have said, even on Twitter, they have said, Kiapi, you are not a good politician, or you are not a serious politician. By that they mean I'm not playing the politics the way it should be played. But I want to tell Kenyans the 10th time, again and again, that come 2017, the country is not asking for the best politicians. The country is not asking for who can be the best politician to manipulate the masses. The country, Kenya, has been asking, Kenya has been waiting, and it is still waiting for leaders who care about everybody, leaders who first put the interests of Kenya and the interests of the people of Kenya before themselves. And a lot of people will present themselves, and we ask the Kenyan people to be diligent. And yes, if it is money, you are going to use a secretariat to decide who becomes your leaders, then I can tell you a lot of them will be not there.
Okay.
They will be out. And so we hope and we look forward to a great election, peaceful election, but also to Kenyans engaging and getting the right leaders.
All right. Okay. Thanks very much, both of you. We thank you for making the time to be with us on Checkpoint, Mohamed Abdu-Badida and James Ole Kiapi. We look forward to seeing you in 2017, but before that, hopefully, a little more in the time between now and then. Thank you both for your time. I'll get to your comments in just a moment on Checkpoint. Remember to keep them coming. The hashtag is Checkpoint on social media. The number is 22155 on SMS. It's absolutely free. Are you convinced by their arguments? Do you think they are the right leaders in 2017? They think they are. At least one will be running in 2017. James is still consulting. We hope to hear what that decision will be. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
When building a home, start with the roof in mind. Just as clothes can tell about someone, a house can talk without saying a word. The roof is the most visible outer expression of the house. Let your roof represent who you are by choosing a color and a design that expresses your personality.
My husband made a bold move that will protect our family by using roofing sheet that...
President William Ruto is warning Kenyan officials at the Olympic Games that they will be held accountable for their actions in Rio. Team Kenya has experienced hiccups from a doping scandal to travel hitches and even lack of sufficient kitting. Ruto was speaking as he concluded his 3-day tour of Brazil, where he spent time with the Kenyan team at the Rio Olympics.
And in a small way, we are beginning to the first steps
We have promised every sportsman and woman who has come to Rio that when they come back home, each one of them, whether they win a gold or not, will be paid 150,000 shillings. Each one of them, every participant. We have scaled up the prizes for gold, silver, and bronze to 1,750,000 and 500,000. And I have told them very clearly that we will hold every sports administrator to account, and everybody who has taken up a job to do in whatever level must deliver. They must keep to the straight and narrow. And as you may be aware, every sports administrator that has stepped out of line, we have taken decisive action, and we will continue to do that. And I am confident that our sports administrators will up their game so that we avoid any issues that may be labeled against our country.
So, I want us to look at some of your feedback on our discussion tonight. Quite overwhelming, actually. So, let's pick a number of them. My take is coming up, but let's look at this for just a moment. Collins Kevs says, Mohamed Abdu Badira is the only sober presidential candidate we should trust. Benson Much says, too bad the genius minds of the likes of Dida can only survive in Kenyan politics as from the year 2050. And then, okay, Kiapi and Dida points out the reality but don't want to accept it, and that makes them jokers in the world of politics. Reflex Concepts Limited says, Dida is passionate about the poor. If only Kenyans saw it in his eyes. Kennypedia says, too bad Dida isn't from Central Rift Valley or Nyanza. He's vying in a country where voting is based on candidates' surname and tribal lines. Kiapi and Dida appear on the limelight towards the general elections. Kenyan politicians, though, says Atanasi _. Msupa Senali says, Abdu Badida, the guy never fails in metaphors. He has zero chills for no one and says it as it is. That he does. Wamboy again says, if you're a serious presidential candidate, you can't just disappear and appear only during elections unless you are an IEBC clerk. And so much more of your views. Shay of Sheba says, personally, I'm not a good noisemaker. You're quoting Dida. You say, this guy makes me so happy. Finally, Father Gabriel Dolan says, Kiapi and Dida are decent folk, but you need a team to win a presidential election. Finally, Montessori KE says, no, both aren't serious candidates. They are flowering their political biography. Wanatusumbua tu. All right, those are your views. Thank you so much. Quite a number of them coming in tonight. That was our discussion. Thank you for your feedback. Remember, you can carry on the conversation and follow it. The hashtag is Checkpoint on social media. Now, before we wind up the show, as always, it's To My Take. And tonight it is about the silly season. And yes, nothing seems to have changed, even for the forthcoming general election. A few days ago, almost out of the blue, a few Jubilee MPs announced somewhere in Kiambu that they would support one Eugene Ludovic Wamalwa to be the next governor for Nairobi. The 47-year-old former MP happens to be the current cabinet secretary in charge of water and irrigation. And as if acting on cue, almost immediately, more than 10 MPs and 2 governors from what used to be Western Province joined the chorus in endorsing Wamalwa for the coveted job in the city. Never mind that Western is so far from Nairobi, and these leaders clearly don't vote in the city. Now, let's be clear. Anybody has a right to propose, endorse, or even reject any candidate for any post in Kenya. As a matter of fact, it is entirely possible that Wamalwa could be a good governor for Nairobi. Who knows? What is most unsettling, however, is just how unashamedly the backers and critics of the Wamalwa candidacy have flaunted the tribal card in this somewhat premature jostling for the city. Only last week, an analyst believed to be Jubilee-leaning announced on national television that Wamalwa was the preferred candidate because he would at least split, if not entirely, run away with the Luya vote in the city and therefore deny the incumbent Evans Kidero a second term. The sentiments have since been echoed by a number of Jubilee MPs who have declared that Wamalwa will complete the city's arithmetic. After all, the Deputy President declared not too long ago that this time Jubilee will do whatever it takes to ensure Nairobi is in the bag. Wamalwa's critics have also fronted what they believe is the might of the Kikuyu vote in Nairobi and cannot understand how a so-called outsider should be in charge of the city. To be fair, most politicians and political parties, including those in CORD, play this game of ethnic arithmetic. But for Jubilee, the irony of the timing couldn't be more awkward. Just this past week, we saw a big ceremony at State House in which the president announced that at least 12 parties would be merging to form one big party that would end the culture of tribal politics in Kenya. Now, clearly, the president was not talking about Nairobi politics, or maybe the politicians here are just not listening to him. And that is my take tonight. Thank you very much for your feedback tonight and always. Please keep the conversation going. It doesn't stop here. #Checkpoint on social media. My name is Yvonne Matole. Wishing you a good night.
KTN News. Get the whole story.